show, we take a look at the question, is it time that we rethink what it means to hustle? The tragic deaths in the last few days of Anna Sebastian and Tarun Saxena, one an employee at Ernst & Young, the other at Bajaj Finance. They've sparked national outrage, created a conversation, and of course brought to light the crushing toll of toxic work environments. Now, it is time to question the rules, to stop glorifying the grind, and of course to demand that workplaces value human beings and their well-being as much as results. Let's just take a deeper look at both of these stories. There is, of course, Anna, who we're showing you on your screens. She succumbed to extreme work stress after only 4 months on the job. She left behind a heartbroken family, and you'll remember the tearful, heartbreaking public plea that her mother made to reconsider the glorification of overwork. That resonated deeply. There's also, of course, Tarun. We're also showing you him on your screens. Unable to meet impossible targets set by his managers, he took his life, revealing in his suicide note just how relentless work pressure led to sleepless nights, deteriorating health. These aren't isolated incidents, and that's why we're taking a look at this story today. We're witnessing a dangerous pattern, companies pushing their employees to the brink, often, as we can see over here, with terrible, very, very dire consequences.
So let's look at hustle culture a little bit. The idea that success demands sleepless nights and long hours remains rampant even as mental health issues and burnout are skyrocketing. Perhaps that was the case in earlier generations or a particular set of people, but clearly not the case anymore, right? And while some might still be glorifying it, not speaking about it openly, but still sort of pushing for it, there have been some voices from the industry that have spoken out. For example, it is the Zoho CEO, Sridhar Vembu, the Swiggy CEO, Rohit Kapoor, both amongst those who came out to say that, listen, let's put an end to this, or certainly have a conversation about it. Sridhar Vembu warns of a pressure cooker environment many employees face, from grueling commutes to stressful deadlines, urging companies to focus on decentralizing operations and creating a more sustainable work-life balance. Isn't that something we all relate to? Rohit Kapoor, on the other hand, also dismissed the night work hours as unsustainable, encouraging employees to prioritize their sanity over senseless hustling. Now, these leaders remind us that extreme work pressure is not a badge of honor, it is a systemic failure. And perhaps just to sort of point it out at this point, nobody is saying that hustle is bad. We are saying hustle is a phase. It is not a way of life, right? Unlike what many would say came from Narayan Murthy, who went on to controversially make statements about 70-hour work weeks. These CEOs, on the other hand, the new age CEOs, sort of speaking a different language. So we'll decode all of this, unpack all of this on the program, because clearly it's not just Anna's story, it is not just Tarun's. There are so many unreported cases, more and more being talked about in hushed circles.
So I really want to highlight for our audiences before we go ahead, part of what you said right now, Sonal. Hustling is not the problem. As you pointed out, overworking is, when hustling becomes the norm, our everyday. And this is not just about the conversation around a work-life balance, it's also about survival. Companies must do better, but to understand how, we have with us an expert on the show today. We have Smita Das Jain. She's the founder and the CEO of Empower Yourself. She's a certified executive coach. She's joining us right here on the broadcast. Let's go over to her to ask her more on this story. Smita, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Smita, could we ask you first?
And Sonal, thank you for having me here.
Yes, of course. Smita, if we could ask you, these two incidents that have taken place, you are someone who frequents executives, you're talking to them all the time, executives across companies, that's senior leadership. I want to understand from you, these two stories, do you think they are the reckoning that the nation needed? Are these conversations finally entering into boardrooms, into senior leadership?
Toya, it's actually unfortunately, it's a one-off thing. See, these incidents have been happening for quite some time. If we look at the year 2022 alone, Statista shared the statistics that in that year alone, 11,481 employees in corporate India committed suicide, lost their lives because of work-life stress. There were around, again, 5,000 odd additional employees in the government and public sector. So in 1 year alone, we had 16,000 such deaths. but it didn't enter the mainstream conversation still. Unfortunately, till a mother's letter to a head of an organization went viral. And now we are having this conversation because there is limelight. Unfortunately, again, when the limelight will be gone, we will be back to our old ways. These incidents have been happening. Everybody knows that there's a hustle culture. Overwork, long work hours, unrealistic targets are a badge of honor. As a life and executive coach, I have clients coming to me every day that how do I cope with this pressure? This is so unrealistic. I'm not getting time for my personal life. How do I manage? Why are they coming to me at an individual basis? Why are organizations not providing them support? Until this support system isn't there, the incidents will continue happening till we start, until we stop glorifying the 70-hour work culture, until we stop saying that working 9 to 9 is a badge of honor. There will be a lot of pressure. Okay, it's also peer pressure. If somebody is working for 12 hours a day, then others point out, why aren't you also doing that? So till it is there, these incidents unfortunately will continue until some systematic changes happen.
Yeah. So I slightly disagree with you on just it being a peer pressure or just being a systemic change. At the end of the day, culture percolates from the top. So if this were to change, leaderships have to take note, correct? Leaders have to be more mindful of the culture that is sort of trickling down. And why, we've said this in the past as well, why this story is sort of striking a chord with so many people, because we're saying this did not happen inside a startup. This happened in a well-organized structure like EY, like others that we have spoken about. So what is the lag? Why aren't the leaders able to sort of see this through? Are they worried about the impact? Or is this a different generation of leaders we are speaking with who perhaps haven't sort of accepted the changing environment?
See, first thing, IQ, especially in our culture, is always given more importance than EQ. So today's generation of leaders, they have grown from the ranks, right? And right from that time, the culture is such that, okay, the more you work, the higher it is as a badge of honor. So that's the mindset they are still carrying. And as you rightly said, Sonal, yes, the Generation Z, the young generation is different. But the leadership is still set on the mindset which they have seen in their older years. So it is like, okay, the means justify the ends, or rather whatever end is there, we have to achieve our targets. There is too much focus on IQ, meeting targets at any cost. And there is too less of focus on EQ and empathy. There are organizations which are not putting as much emphasis on empathy training, sensitization training. Till empathy is emphasized, till as leaders, right, stemming from the top. And remember, leaders also have other leaders above them. It's actually a pyramid. So right from the top, until we start propagating EQ, emotional quotient, giving as much importance to empathy and sensitization in leadership, this thing is going to happen. Leaders are not trained in sensitization. Somebody comes, okay, I have a problem, I have too much heavy workload. People are even afraid to say that because the environment is not
the
safe.
leader's job.
Yes, exactly. So it's not considered a line job. All the leaders are concerned about, or most of the leaders, I would say, hey, I have to meet targets. And to be fair to them, even they have their own pressure of meeting targets. So I have to meet targets. You ask me any challenges regarding that, I will tell you. But hey, if you are dealing with pressure, be a man, be a leader, deal up to the change. So work pressure is something that is normalized. You are supposed to deal with it in the eyes of the senior leaders in terms of the culture. And as I said, until this mindset changes, leaders have to set an example. And they are setting an example that hustle culture is a badge of honor. You have to deal with it. So deal with it. And that's why it's continuing like that. They are not ready to, they don't have that mindset actually that disconnecting from work-life balance, the always on culture, it's actually not sustainable. They have not been, they have put, there is blinkers in their eyes, and it's not that they are to blame. It's, it's the environment they have grown up in. It's the mindset, it's the culture. Until sensitization trainings are given, until, somebody tells them that EQ and empathy is equally important, you have to shift to a culture where mistakes are accepted as learnings rather than failures. This will continue.
Smita, let me ask you an interesting perspective in this entire story that has cropped up over the last few weeks that I thought was interesting was the idea, or the criticism rather, that this entire conversation is specific to white-collar workers. That when we talk about work-life balance, that concept in itself, even though we're not saying that they have work-life balance, but even the concept, the question that we only speak particularly to white-collar workers. We leave blue-collar workers out of this discussion. I just want to ask you your perspective there. And I ask you that because, again, the Swiggy CEO coming out and saying this when at the same time there is today such a conversation around delivery workers and how they are treated. I just want to ask how you see these conflicting tides.
See, work-life pressure is also there at the blue-collar worker level. The only difference is that it's like more accepted. You are supposed to deal with those longer work hours and 24/7 work days without leave if you are a blue-collar worker. Again, it's the culture, it's the societal norm. For white-collar workers, it has always been, hey, you are supposed to anyway deal with it. You are, unlike the blue-collar workers, you are, sitting inside an air-conditioned office. There are all the resources. So you are better equipped, better educated. You are that's the norm. Go ahead and accept it. It is, and that is the reason, like, the deaths, any incidents happening with the delivery boys and other blue-collar workers, why even the housemates, okay, nobody talks about that. There should be a norm that, they should have their weekly offs. What will happen, how do they manage, even if they ask for leave during a festival, there is this request, or how will we manage, all our guests are coming. That's the way of life, that's the way society is. It's only when these white-collar incidents happen, because it's us, right? We all are white-collar workers and we are present in the social media. We have the means to talk about it, and one of these conversations catches attention and goes viral. And these conversations start happening. Work pressure is very much pervasive across all strata of society. As white-collar employees, we do have the advantage of using social media to propagate our voice. We do have that advantage of, reaching out to the network. Unfortunately, blue-collar workers, they don't have that medium, and that's why their voice is not propagated as much.
All right. Right. Smita, we'll have to leave it there for the moment. Thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. And just to sort of underline again, for a lot of hustlers watching the program right now, there is nothing wrong in what you're doing if it is coming from within. And trust me, it's coming from another hustler. If it's coming from within, if you like putting in those extra hours, please do it. The problem is when you're forced to be in an environment where you have no other choice. That is the problem, and that is what we really need to address over here. Thanks, Smita, for joining us for that very fascinating chat. Let's switch tracks now.